Before we begin, this episode includes discussions of murder, lynching, vigilante violence, and the destruction of human remains. Listener discretion is advised. This episode is based on historical newspaper reporting, academic research, and publicly available records. Some details vary between sources, and many crimes attributed to the Archer Gang were never proven in court.
Any individuals discussed as suspected participants should be considered innocent unless proven guilty under law. Our goal is to examine the surviving historical record while remembering the victims and avoiding the exaggerations that sometimes become attached to old crime stories.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Hoosier Myths and Legends. Today's episode falls under our true crime series, Hoosier Case File, where we examine crimes, mysteries, outlaws, and unresolved stories from Indiana history.
And even though this is not primarily a paranormal story, it takes place in the kind of landscape that seems built for legends: remote hills, dense woods, caves, sinkholes, and isolated communities where people could disappear without leaving much of a trail.
Today, we are traveling to southern Indiana in the years following the Civil War, particularly Martin and Orange counties. This region, often called the Lost River Country, became home to one of Indiana's most feared outlaw families.
The Archer Gang was accused of robbery, livestock theft, arson, intimidation, ambush killings, and the murder of anyone who threatened to expose them. But this story is also about a killing inside a cave, a confession from an accomplice, 3 prisoners taken from jail and lynched, and one final gang member who went to the gallows claiming that he would take the gang's secrets with him.
This is the story of the Archer Gang. So, Becky, before we get started today, I think we need to clear something up.
What I do now?
Well, remember our last episode?
Of course. Bond's Chapel, the chain on the tombstone.
Well, at the end of that episode, you may have told everyone that the Archer Gang were bootleggers.
Okay, listen, in my defense,
there is no defense.
All right, I admit it. I was wrong. I got so excited, I think I got the time frames mixed up a little.
There it is, folks. You heard it here first. Becky admits she was wrong.
My students are going to love this.
Well, I just want to make sure we get the timeline right this time.
Apparently, I got a little ahead of myself. The Archer Gang were not bootleggers.
I'm so impressed, Becky, because somehow you managed to drag prohibition into a story where it didn't belong.
So let me officially correct the record. In our last episode, I mistakenly referred to the Archer Gang as bootleggers, and they weren't. They were involved in robberies, theft, and murder, and we're going to get into all of that today.
So now that we've cleared that up,
we can hopefully get through this episode without me accidentally moving Indiana history around on the timeline again.
So let's get into the story of the Archer Gang.
To understand how a gang like the Archers could operate for years, we need to understand where they lived. The Lost River region includes much of Martin and Orange counties, along with portions of Du Bois County. It is a landscape filled with wooded ridges, underground waterways, sinkholes, caves, and isolated farms.
In the 19th century, roads were limited, communication between communities was slow, and law enforcement was often lightly staffed and far away. Someone who knew the landscape could hide stolen property, move livestock along back roads, or disappear into the woods before authorities arrived.
Historian Randy Mills has described Southern Indiana gangs of this period as organizations often built around a single family, supported by relatives and a handful of trusted associates. That family structure made loyalty harder to break and witnesses easier to intimidate.
The exact membership of the gang changes depending on the source, but the central figures included Thomas or Tom Archer, his brother Martin, commonly called Mart, Tom's sons, John and Samuel Archer, and a younger Martin Archer, sometimes called Little Mart.
Several non-family associates were also connected to the gang, including John Lynch, John Johnson, Mack and Nathan Holt, Webb Lynch, and William Ross. Some accounts claim the gang included around 16 people, most connected through blood, marriage, or longtime association.
The Archers were accused of stealing cattle, hogs, timber, and other property. They also reportedly robbed businesses and travelers and retaliated against people who challenged them. These were not glamorous Wild West outlaws. Their victims were usually their own neighbors.
And once the family gained a reputation for violence, fear did much of the work for them. A farmer might suspect who stole his livestock, but reporting it meant accusing an entire network of brothers, cousins, sons, and friends, and then returning to an isolated home where help might be miles away.
The Archer gang emerged while southern Indiana was still recovering from the Civil War. Communities remained politically divided, weapons were readily available, and some returning soldiers struggled to adjust to civilian life.
The region had already produced another notorious outlaw family, the Reno Gang, whose members committed some of the earliest peacetime train robberies in the United States. Several Reno Gang members were seized from custody and lynched by vigilantes in 1868.
That established a dangerous pattern. When people believed the courts could not control violent criminals, mobs sometimes decided to impose their own punishment. By the time the Archer gang reached the height of its reputation, outlaw violence and vigilante violence were both familiar parts of southern Indiana life.
The events that eventually destroyed the gang appear to have started with a dispute among criminals. A younger member of the family, usually identified as Little Mart Archer, was involved in stealing a log raft with a man named Sam Marley.
Some records spell Marley's name Morley, but we will use Marley here. According to an 1886 newspaper account, the two men argued over how to divide the money from the stolen raft. Little Mart believed he had been cheated and allegedly threatened to expose Marley.
Marley responded by shooting and killing him. Another local man, Samuel Bunch, reportedly helped Marley escape. That decision placed Bunch directly in the path of the Archer gang.
Unfortunately, the historical records tell us far more about Samuel Bunch's death than about his life. He was described as a large and physically strong local man, approximately 6 feet tall and weighing around 200 pounds.
The Archers believed Bunch had helped Marley flee and either knew where he was hiding or had given him money. Whether Bunch actually knew Marley's location is unclear, but the gang had already decided that he was responsible.
The most detailed account of what happened next came from John Lynch, an Archer associate who later testified for the state. Lynch said Samuel Archer and the elder Mart Archer went out to capture Bunch and returned several hours later with his hands tied using strips of bark.
Bunch reportedly told Lynch, "They have got me." Mart Archer announced that they were taking him to Saltpeter Cave, supposedly to hold him until he revealed Marley's location. According to Lynch, however, the gang never intended to let Bunch return.
The group traveled through the woods at night toward a cave approximately 2 miles away. Mart Archer reportedly stopped long enough to retrieve a lantern before leading Bunch along a narrow path to the entrance.
Inside, the cave opened into several large chambers. Bunch sat on a rock while the gang stood roughly 20 feet away. Mart demanded to know where Sam Marley was, and Bunch said he did not know.
Mart gave him 5 minutes to answer and told the others to prepare their weapons. Bunch apparently did not believe they would actually shoot him. According to Lynch, he told the men, You wouldn't shoot anybody.
Mart then gave the order to fire. Lynch claims 16 shots were fired, filling the chamber with gun smoke. When the smoke cleared, Matt approached Bunch and fired a final shot into his head.
Samuel Bunch had been executed because the gang believed he helped a man they wanted for revenge.
The gang initially left Bunch's body inside the cave. Later, worried that it would be discovered, they returned with whiskey, coal, oil, and a wooden box.
By then, the body had begun to decompose. The men placed his remains inside the box, nailed it shut, carried it to a pile of dry oak, and poured coal oil over it.
Lynch claimed the men drank whiskey while watching the fire consume the body. They were not simply hiding evidence, they were trying to erase Samuel Bunch completely.
But they failed. Years later, Lynch led authorities to the location. Investigators reportedly found ashes, nails from the box, fragments identified as human bone, bullet marks in the cave walls, and dark stains on the stone where Bunch had been sitting.
Historical newspaper accounts connected the gang or its associates to additional killings, including Sanford Freeman, an older relative or cousin of Bunch, and another man identified as McCormack.
Freeman was reportedly called to his door around midnight and shot. McCormack, described as a Bunch sympathizer, was allegedly killed from ambush.
These accusations strengthened the belief that anyone who supported the Archers' enemies could become a target. However, not every allegation resulted in a trial, and much of the surviving information came from informants who had reasons to reduce their own responsibility.
The man later credited with helping break the gang was a blacksmith from French Lick named Joseph Wells. According to an 1886 account, Wells began investigating after his own shop was burglarized.
The newspaper claimed Wells gained little Mart Archer's confidence, learned who had committed the burglary, armed himself with a Winchester rifle, and captured 5 alleged gang members.
Some of those details may have been dramatized by later newspaper coverage, but Wells appears to have played a real role in disrupting the organization. Once arrests began, the loyalty holding the gang together started to collapse.
John Archer reportedly gave authorities information that led to Mart Archer's arrest. Mart then provided information against others. Finally, John Lynch gave investigators the most damaging account of all.
Lynch described Samuel Bunch's abduction, the march to the cave, the shooting, and the burning of the remains. He also guided authorities to physical evidence that appeared to support parts of his story.
The gang had survived through family loyalty and community fear. Now it was being dismantled by betrayal from within.
But the story of the Archer gang was about to take an even darker turn.
We'll be back after a short break.
Before we get back to the episode, we wanted to tell you about something new we're putting together for our listeners.
It's an online book club focused on Indiana authors, Indiana-related books, local history, folklore, mysteries, and of course, stories with a Hoosier connection.
The book club will live in a Facebook group, so you can join from anywhere, read along at your own pace, and be part of the conversation when a book catches your interest.
Some months might feature local history, some might feature fiction, some might lean spooky, strange, or legendary, but the heart of it will always be Indiana stories and the people who tell them.
So if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, we'd love to have you join us.
You can find the link in our show notes or watch our Facebook page for more details as we get the group started.
Come read with us, talk books with us, and help us celebrate Indiana authors and Indiana stories.
Now, let's get back to the episode.
We're back.
And when we left off, the Archer gang was beginning to fall apart from the inside.
But before the courts could fully determine who was guilty of what, a mob intervened.
Tom, Mart, and John Archer were held at the jail in Shoals, the county seat of Martin County. Public anger was intense, fueled by stories of the cave murder, burned body, and years of intimidation.
On March 10th, 1886, a vigilante mob descended on the jail. The 3 prisoners were removed from custody, taken to the courthouse lawn, and hanged from nearby trees.
There was no trial, verdict, or lawful sentence. However guilty the men may have been, the lynching was not justice administered through the courts.
It also damaged the investigation. Dead suspects could not identify other gang members, reveal additional crimes, lead authorities to more evidence, or challenge false accusations.
The Archer lynching was part of a broader vigilante problem in southern Indiana. Groups sometimes known as whitecaps claimed to fight crime or enforce community morality. They frequently became violent criminal organizations themselves.
Suspected offenders were kidnapped, whipped, tortured, ordered to leave town, or killed. One newspaper account described a man named Smith, identified as an Archer relative, being hanged by a mob in attempt to force information from him.
He survived only after continuing to insist he knew nothing and reportedly agreeing to leave Indiana. The gang had terrorized the community, but the people claiming to destroy it began using terror themselves.
Samuel Archer had not been among the 3 men lynched at Shoals. He was arrested separately and eventually taken to the state prison at Jeffersonville for protection.
When his case returned to Shoals, officials requested military assistance to prevent another mob attack. This time, the state intended to ensure the accused man reached trial.
John Lynch became the prosecution's key witness. He admitted taking part in Bunch's murder and claimed that Sam Archer fired 6 shots during the killing while Lynch fired 3.
Lynch's testimony was graphic, but it was also self-serving. See, he had every reason to cooperate with prosecutors in the hopes of saving himself. Even so, physical evidence found where he directed investigators gave parts of his story credibility.
The jury convicted Samuel Archer and sentenced him to death.
Lynch's credibility later became even more questionable. He was arrested in connection with the murder of Sanford Freeman and eventually pleaded guilty to perjury.
That leaves a difficult question. How much of his account was true? The physical evidence suggests that Bunch was murdered in or near the cave and his remains were burned, but Lynch may have minimized his own role or exaggerated what others did.
While there is enough corroboration to take his story seriously, but not enough to treat every word as unquestionable fact.
Samuel Archer's execution was scheduled for July 9th, 1886. Before his death, he reportedly made 2 unusual requests.
First, he asked to be hanged from the same tree limb where the mob had killed his father. Authorities refused.
Second, he said that if John Lynch were brought before him and witnesses present, he would give a full confession revealing the gang's crimes and implicating additional people in Martin and Daviess counties.
The meeting never happened. Sam Archer said he would take the gang's secrets to the grave, and no complete confession was ever given.
On July 9th, 1886, Samuel Archer was legally hanged at Shoals for his role in the murder of Samuel Bunch. Officials placed canvas walls around the gallows to block the crowd's view, but large numbers of spectators still gathered in town. And that's where the historical story begins to fade into legend. We'll be back after a short break. Are you an Indiana small business owner looking to reach a wider audience?
Consider partnering with the Hoosier Myths and Legends podcast directly to advertise your business.
Our listeners are passionate, engaged, and love supporting local businesses just like yours. By advertising with us, you'll connect directly with a community that values what Indiana has to offer.
Promote your business with the Hoosier Myths and Legends podcast and watch your customer base grow. Ready to make your mark? Contact us today at HoosierMythsandLegends@gmail.com and let's bring your business to the forefront. We're back.
Over time, the Archer gang became part of Southern Indiana folklore. Every unexplained theft, fire, disappearance, or body found in the woods could be attached to the Archer name.
That doesn't mean every story was false, but once a family becomes legendary, Separating documented history from community rumor becomes difficult.
Their surviving record proves enough without embellishment. Samuel Bunch was abducted, taken into a cave, shot repeatedly, and burned in an attempt to conceal the crime.
3 accused members of the gang were then lynched, and a 4th was convicted and executed. We do not need to blame the Archers for every unsolved crime in southern Indiana to understand how violent this story was.
And like many historical crime stories, the criminals became more famous than the victim. The gang received a memorable name, their hideouts, weapons, deaths, and final words were preserved.
Samuel Bunch was reduced to the man murdered by the Archer gang. We know very little about his family, his work, or the life he may have lived, but his death should remain the center of this case.
The Archer case leaves us with a difficult question. What happens when a community loses faith in the legal system?
Residents may have genuinely believed the Archers would escape, intimidate witnesses, or manipulate the courts. That did not make the lynching lawful.
The mob denied the accused men a trial. It also denied the victims and the public a complete accounting of the gang's crimes.
Vigilantes may have believed they were finishing the case. In reality, they may have buried much of the truth with the Archers.
The story of the Archer gang is sometimes told as an Indiana version of the Wild West, a family of dangerous outlaws hiding in caves and terrorizing the countryside.
But the reality is less romantic. This was a network of local men accused of stealing from, intimidating, and killing their own neighbors.
The Archer case is not simply a story about good people defeating bad people. It is a story about what happens when violence becomes the accepted language of an entire community.
The gang used violence to maintain power. The mob used violence to destroy the gang. And caught between them were victims like Samuel Bunch, whose lives were overshadowed by the reputations of the men who killed them.
If you enjoyed this episode, follow Hoosier Myths and Legends wherever you listen to podcasts.
And remember, the Hoosier Case File now runs bi-weekly under the Hoosier Myths and Legends platform.
Until next time,
stay curious
and stay safe.
To see our source material, please visit our website, HoosierMythsandLegends.com. You can find us and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Hoosier Myths and Legends is a Quigley Productions podcast. And as always, stay spooky.